take over for the weather service briefing. Yes. Oh. No. She's got it. Get the technical side associate corrected. Marty, you want the mic? Yeah, news guys that's here, they'd like for you to talk.
All right.
Here if you can.
Good morning, everybody. I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service out of Lake Charles. I have been a meteorologist here since April of 21. So I'm from Mississippi, so I'm just up the street. A quick rundown. I've got quite a bit to go through and not a lot of time, so I might move a little bit fast. I will be available. You can email me. That will be at the end of the next thing we'll be covering are the forecast indicators for the 25 season ahead. Then we'll go over the cyclones and their hazards, forecast timeline, the products and sources that you all would use, what's coming new to 2025, and then how you can connect with us. So, 24 season. Active. This was the forecast for the National Hurricane Center. They were forecasting above average season last year. And these were the numbers that we had out. 18 named storms, several hurricanes, several major hurricanes. And here's a track map on exactly how that planned out. We had 8 tropical cyclones within the Gulf, 7 made landfalls, 5 of those were the United States. 1 is in Texas, 1 Louisiana, 3 Florida. And this year, so far, we are looking at perhaps an above average season once again. So some of the forecast indicators we look at and things of that nature. So we have several research centers from around the United States that put out forecasts every year. So far, the Colorado State University group has put out their forecast. They are forecasting an above average season. They will update several times throughout the summer. The Hurricane Center has not put out their forecast quite yet. We're expecting that to come out in the next couple of weeks. It's usually within the first week of May or so. So I'm sure we will all be very, very vigilant on that once it comes out the door. However, there are indicators we can look at. The Climate Prediction Center has put out their forecast as far as the ENSO profile will be this for the remainder of the year. Currently, we are in ENSO neutral. I will go over that in just a moment as to what that actually means. The gray bars there, as you can see within our peak season, are the probabilities that we will remain in ENSO neutral. And then the blue bars are the next closest item that we could revert perhaps back to La Nina. So these are things that we are very closely monitoring. Another thing we look at are sea surface temperature anomalies. This is something we talk about. The Gulf waters are very warm. They're very red, things of that nature. But as far as when it comes to forecasting, this is the area we're looking at. As you can tell, there's blue there in the center that indicates below average temperatures, but there's no overwhelming signal of either red or blue, leaning into that neutral profile as we're currently in and are expected to remain in. El Nino, but we don't really stop and say exactly what that means. That area that we were highlighting there in the Pacific, if that's overwhelmingly warm, we're expecting more hurricanes on the Pacific side, less on the Atlantic Basin on our side, due to a stronger shear, just as a more hostile environment for hurricanes to develop. And then on the other side, you've got La Nina in that box that I pointed out. If you've got overwhelmingly cold, cooler sea surface temperatures, we're going to have a more favorable environment in the Atlantic Basin. So we're kind of between the two. The environment is perhaps neither going to be hostile or inhospitable, either hospitable or inhospitable. We'll just have to take things as they come. So now we're looking at our storm climatology. As this GIF rolls along, you'll see each month we can tell where the storms are more likely to develop. There's our peak season, August, September. Peak season is September 10th, so if you've got a birthday around that time, it's not a great time to have a birthday around that time. We move into October. The area where we're expecting to see more storms tends to move off as we start to see those frontal boundaries, waters are cooling, and the environment overall becomes less hospitable overall. So if we're in an ENSO neutral format, then perhaps we might be somewhat close to what this expectation is as far as climatology goes. Again, you can see the Gulf tends to be pretty open at the beginning of the season. The entire Atlantic Basin opens towards the center of the season, and then it moves off to the east towards the end of the season. This is a breakdown of the major hurricanes by phase as we've seen them since 1856. El Nino is slightly lower numbers, La Nina slightly higher numbers. Generally, neutral tends to have the highest numbers just because it falls between the two. In El Nino versus La Nina, it's kind of hard to get a full-blown either one of those. You're kind of a strong El Nino or a weak El Nino or vice versa. So those are some of the numbers as they kind of can play out. Here's the names just in case you're either dropped or stayed somewhat similar. And that is a direct impact from an improvement in understanding hazards, understanding the impacts of those hazards, and making the public more aware overall so that they heed the warnings that we issue. And this that we're doing right now is a huge player in that. I want to talk about those impacts both at and away from storms, because lowering the numbers of fatalities by educating ourselves, because we are the lifelines to our direct public. So, video is going to play here. Let's play once or twice. The numbers along the bottom are old, but the current actual Saffir-Simpson wind scale is there on the right. As you move upwards, you see the impacts on structures as we get towards category 2, 3, 4. And this is how we categorize our hurricanes. We get towards category between 3 and 4, that becomes more catastrophic. But then between 4 and 5, it's just completely life-ending, unsurvivable. Then we get caught up a lot on high-end Cat 4 versus low-end Category 5. Let's see if I can make it play again. Ha. We get caught up between high-end Cat 4, low-end Cat 5. Now it plays through another time so you can see. But largely, we are moving away from focusing on category, major hurricane, and could you click on the screen and see if you can get it to go? This is what is that predicted wind field. So yes, it's making landfall in Mexico, but you see that triangle there on the Texas-Louisiana coast, that's Texas Point. We had impact can be felt well inland. We all know about the large tornado, extremely mindful of for listening for these types of impacts that might be coming down the line. Impacts don't always match the intensity. Some of the worst flooding incidents that we've had for 2019 stalled over southeast Texas and resulted in between 40 and 45 inches of rainfall. That will kill people. That will result in catastrophic flooding. These are things that don't take big impacts from. And lastly, impacts can be removed and not match intensity. This is video from the Mississippi coast from Tropical Storm Cristobal in 2020, east of Grand Isle, but this is when the surge was occurring in Mississippi. You can have a landfalling storm in southwest Louisiana and get large surging impacts in east Louisiana. These are things that we just watch out for. As the wind field expands outwards, it's got a long fetch. It'll bring those elevated waters far east of the storm, just like we saw with Alberto on Texas Point. This is the exact same location for a storm that's making landfall a full state away. So it's a moving target. How do we hit it? We're doing exactly what we're doing right now. Education of you all.
because you are our lifeline to our people. It's preparation. It's knowing that these incidents can occur outside of the storm center, outside of the landfall location. And it's knowing your sources, where to get your information, and what information to trust in this age of social media. So, the forecast timeline and the products we use. This is a graphic that our office was using quite a bit last year. We got quite a bit of positive feedback. When you're 5 to 7 days or 7 days plus outside of something that might happen, what details can you reasonably expect to receive regarding a forecast this far out? Well, you'll have the 7-day graphic, which is one we're all very familiar with. Its sister graphic is the 2-day. You'll look to this to see where's the area that's outlined of development. Yellow is less than 40%, orange 40 to 60%, or red for greater than a 60%. That's a high chance of development over whichever the period that might be, 7 days or 2-day. And depending, you might get a tropical forecast cone that far out, 5 days in advance, maybe. You might be towards the tail end of it. Then you move into the 3 to 5 day and the 1 to 2 day. Again, what details can you reasonably expect from a forecast this far out? This is the point where we're asking folks to really keep an eye on things. We should be narrowing down our possible impacts to specific areas, but that might not always be the case. We had a lot of storms last season that existed within the 1 to 2 or 3 to 5 day periods that we still didn't have specifics on. But we're still urging our folks to keep a close eye on things, continue to review those plans, and refresh your supplies, and just make those plans and be ready to take action as quickly as possible. And this is where we're going to run through a cacophony of graphics that the National Hurricane Center provides. I can provide any of these slides to you all. I'm going to move through them rather quickly because we're tight on time. But this is one of the ones that we like to use quite a bit for planning. Earliest reasonable arrival of tropical storm force winds. I know a lot of trigger points end on the onset of tropical storm force winds. So this is one that we like to use to help our partners decide at what point do they stop, what point should they be done. This is what we like to use. And then with that, the leaving tropical storm force winds, and you'll have the probabilities that are associated with that. We have another product, very similar, but it's the most likely arrival time. Use the earliest reasonable to help make those plans, because as you see the dotted line there on the Louisiana coast, Wednesday 2 a.m. versus the most likely operations and have them completed. Some other graphics that the Hurricane Center provides with each advisory, you'll have key messages where they're highlighting the greatest concerns that we're expecting. And that's why you might then look to us to see what we're saying about our forecast areas. Your peak storm surge forecast, this is going to be for a swath of area with the heights that we are exposed to. This is meant to be used along the immediate coastline, and these levels likely will not extend very far inland. We do the best that we can to have no missed events, which is why we might, the areas might be a little bit more broad than actuality is, or they might be a little higher than actuality, but we do our best not to undershoot something because those storm surge death figures are just so high.
And Marty, the red area is where the most intense is going to be, but it's not focused on the center of it. It's the whole swath.
Exactly, and if that wind swath is extending very far outside, like we saw with Alberto or with Cristobal, those areas might not match exactly where landfall is, and these are things that I've tried to explain to you today that you can carry forward and say, oh, well, maybe that explains why the area of surge is greater this far away from the storm. These are just things to keep in the back of your mind as we're moving into and through hurricane season. And another thing, that this is something we issue on our level, the decision support briefing packages. We will be issuing these and briefing on them every 6 hours as we know that landfall is coming or imminent, to assist you all. This is the place to go to ask questions, to seek direct information from us. You can call us, you can message us in Slack. We'll go over some of those contact points, but this is something that will be coming from your local Weather Service forecast office every advisory. Oh, excuse me. And then lastly, social media can be a place for good information. Just be very, very mindful as to where you're getting your information from. We deal with this every winter and tropical season. Every goober out there posts every single hurricane run. If you have a question, please call us. Please call us, please call us, please call us. Message us. We will tell you what to believe and what not to believe. We will give you our thoughts. And then social media is where we will be briefing the public, or we'll be posting some of those other graphics that we've got as they come. This is a graphic that we actually helped Houston issue after Beryl. Their office went down, and so we issued their heat advisory for them after the fact. They actually had to adjust their heat advisory criteria downwards because nobody had AC after the storm, and we had people that were out helping, doing response activities, recovery activities, and we needed to make sure that they were aware that it's going to be hot after the fact. And so these are some things to keep an eye out for as well. New to the season. Again, I will provide these to you if you want them. RIP current forecast map for the entire United States that goes with the system, or highlighting areas outside of the system. The experimental cone graphic with updates, this came out last year, and it highlights the areas not just on the coastline that are under those watches and warnings. This now indicates all of the inland areas under the watches and warnings. And if there's an area under a tropical storm warning, hurricane watch, as you can see in that kind of striped area near Tampa or north of Tampa there, that will be highlighted as well. I really enjoy this graphic. They have updated the PTC, which is potential tropical cyclone criteria. A potential tropical cyclone is a disturbance that's not yet tropical, but poses the threat of being a tropical storm or hurricane and bringing those conditions to land areas. If the center has not fully formed, it by definition is not a cyclone, and so this helps us to be able to issue those products well in advance. The NHC has updated this to now we can issue up to 72 hours. It was 48 hours previous. So now up to 72 hours we might be issuing these products, so don't get caught off guard. Keep your eyes open, your ears open. These things can come out very quickly as they see that they're needed. And then the annual update to the forecast cone. The cone is statistically graded upon the last 5 years worth of data, which includes from 2020 to 2024. And so the size will be slightly smaller this year than compared to last year. That comes every year. So, in summary, we had an active season with 5 U.S. Gulf landfalls. There were 7 total landfalls in the Gulf. Indications are present for an above average 2025 season. The forecast for the NHC is out for May. Education of the public about tropical hazards can directly result in less deaths overall. So please carry that forward with you all. Know your products and sources. There are how can you contact us? Feel free to take a photo of this. We have a Slack channel if you all are in Slack. This is where you will find our office. If you do not have Slack, make sure that you all are able to contact us as our partners. We have our webpage, our Facebook, our formerly Twitter X, and then we have an online way of
And you also have public announcements from YouTube?
Yes, we brief on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, formerly known Twitter, I think. And then here is the breakdown of all the offices over the state and who you can contact in each of those areas. But we're fine if you want to overlap. It's not going to hurt our feelings. If you're east of us and you contact us, we'll get you with whoever you need to speak to. So, and then here's my email here at the bottom left. All right, I know that was fast. I know that was a lot. Any quick questions if we've got time?
No questions? Okay.
Awesome. Like I said, hit me up. I can give you guys the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Appreciate it. And then everybody should know also that the Weather Service in Lake Charles, Roger Arrington is retiring. He's an old guy that was around for many years. So he'll be retiring shortly at the end of this month. And we'll all miss him. But Marty and Jonathan and Doug, they get a hold of the reins, right? Okay. Next we have Tim Osborne with NOAA. He's always a good speaker, presenter for all of us, and knows this area like the back of his hand, right? That's really good. All right.
I wanted to say thanks. As Mac and Cindy and others pointed out, this has been 13 years. This has been an incredible occasion in terms of being able to do this for this long. No other region across the entire Gulf Coast has set a record and done so much planning or have so many people to functionally plan out what do we do with the storms. And that's really important. I mean, we've gone to Florida. We do our hurricane prep meetings with the state, and we do the prep meetings with Port Tampa Bay. But it's like, where are you going to be? I'm going to be over here. What do we do? You know, and then they go through a rote of things. They don't have an experience base. You have, and I think that's really an incredible feat. I want to thank the port. Would like to thank the congressional delegation. Actually, they were one of the ones that really got this started as well. All the parishes, all the cities, all the law enforcement and everything. This is really an incredible opportunity to talk about so many of these opportunities or challenges we're going to be facing. As Marty talked about, there's been 5 landfalls last year. I did 3 of the 5. I did Francine out of Homa. I was over in Savannah for Helene, and then I went in and I flew in and was there before Milton made the landfall and stayed throughout the entire event itself. The important things we're lesson-wise that we're talking about here are very, very key because everyone runs across the same problem all the time, and it's always new experiences like in Florida. I can't overemphasize enough what Marty talked about. Winds, you've got to hide from the winds. It is incredibly destructive. It will kill. I came out of a incident command center at Port Canaveral several years ago with a hurricane that went by. The winds were dying. Me and the president of the Pilots Association of Canaveral went that way to check out the port. A sheriff deputy and a Coast Guard chief of waterways went that way to look at. The winds are dying. The sun's coming up. The storm is already passing. It's really windy, but hey, it's a new day. Let's move on. And a piece of sheet metal flying through the air hit the Coast Guard commander in the skull, crushed his skull. The ambulances were tucked away inland, safe, away from the storm itself, so EMS had to put him in the back of a pickup truck with a towel wrapped around his skull and get him down to shock trauma, where he actually survived. But I will just point out the fact that if you think of like, ooh, it could be 150-mile-an-hour winds, I better hide. Anything, 45 or more, yeah. This?
Yeah.
All right. Is that better? Okay, we're going to start again.
We love to hear it.
So, just to lighten it up, grasshopper walks into a bar, sits at the bar, bartender looks at the grasshopper looks back at the bartender. Finally, the bartender can't stand it. Opens his mouth and says, "You know, we got a drink named after you." Grasshopper gets this weird look on his face. Finally opens his mouth, says to the bartender, "Why would anyone name a drink Bob?" So as we lead in and as I get into talking about some of these things, I'd like to point out the fact that nobody ever succeeds by not working together and staying chill and working the program. That is all the way it is. What information you get, how you act on it, who you're working with, and how you see the outcome and what kind of timeline you all to come together. Because if I got a different opinion than you and then you, nothing works. And I want to point that out. Okay, so This is it. This was 2024. The National Weather Service did a real head fake on us. Said, like, it's not going to be that busy. And it was one of the most top 5 most. I'd like to also point out the phrase, it only takes one. Only takes one. So if you're thinking it's like, well, we're only talking about 14. And then you're in the middle of the state of Florida with Hurricane Milton coming in, and 23 million Floridians have just freaked out. I can assure you, it's not the 14, it's the 1 that really is what you have to worry about. And so I think that's the really important thing. How do we all work together? This is how we work together. Every year we hold these meetings. Every harbor safety committee we go to, every port and waterway coordination that the U.S. Coast Guard holds, we go to. Why? Because we need to be the people that don't show up just before the hurricane and said, hi, you don't know me, but I am, and here's what we should be, how can we work together? So coordination is really one of the most important keys about all of this, and also to realize what the infrastructure is out there. The infrastructure that is growing, as I've told Cindy before, we are in the midst of the fastest growing part of the U.S. economy, hands down, and that's our maritime, our coastal ports and waterways, and our growth of shipping to and from world markets. Absolutely. This is Lake Charles. $40 billion in annual economic impact, 54,000 jobs, 65 million tons of cargo. And that is not even the story. Who knows what the big news is for Southwest Louisiana? What's the new news? Anyone want to guess? Cameron Parish. 5,000 population, 1,000 people living below the GIWW. And what do they have on the books right now? $65 billion of port and waterway infrastructure with LNG export facilities. Yeah.
I'd like to add to that many of those structures, the modules are being built right here. In
Yes, they are. And this is really one of the things. This is the interconnection. And on top of that, as we had Doug Kramer, Andy Tingler came down and we met at Calcasieu Pass number 1. With the start of Calcasieu Pass number 2, guess what's going to show up in Cameron Parish? 5,000 workers, all living in fifth wheelers, parks, mobile homes for the next 7 to 10 years. It's going to double the population of Cameron Parish. It's going to quintuple the population living below the GIW, and it's going to put them in housing that is in no way capable of dealing with strong wind fields, storm surge, things like that. So the whole thought is, look at the demographics, look at the growth, look at what we're doing and what Morgan City is supporting in terms of that. And you've got Plaquemines Parish, like less than 20,000 population. They just completed the largest privately funded LNG export facility, the largest privately funded project ever in the world, with Plaquemines Parish Venture Global LNG export, and they're about to actually add to it, and they're about to double the entire complex with the construction of LNG Plaquemines now with Delta. So in terms of your coordination, looking at hurricane impacts and looking at infrastructure at risk and populations at risk, it's gone way up. So why are these meetings important? This thing has just exploded in terms of coastal development. So your jobs and all of our jobs are very important. Storm surge, as it was just laid out by Marty, is a killer. But then internal inland rain events are absolutely devastating. I was in Savannah. Savannah, I don't know if you recall, is a huge container port, massive container port of the Atlantic side. I was there, and when Helene went by, and that thing was a monster. I mean, that thing was something you never want to ever see again. And where did the inland flooding and deaths occur? Up in the Carolinas. No one ever thought, hey, it's coming. I'm in the Carolinas. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. And this thing was going to take me out. So in a lot of ways, I would like to recall some of our earlier meetings as we talked about. Remember Hurricane Ike? That thing was never more than a Cat 2, beelining directly to Galveston. And what did it do? It flooded every coastal parish of Louisiana and the North Shore dramatically. So the efforts like Bayou Chene, the efforts of all the flood protection levee systems here, the efforts of maintaining a vigilance as to who's going to be at risk, and the fact that a storm many, many hundreds of miles away still may be a flooding event, is important for you to make sure that you put those plans into place. Understanding ports and needs and contacts are really critical. If you've got things that are coming on, if you've got new developments, if you've got new port and waterway constituencies, let us know. We'll come see it. We will actually come see it to actually start understanding what needs to be done. Plaquemines Parish alone, I was there just last month on the property for Venture Global. Plaquemines, 7,000 people in Plaquemines Parish. And when there's a storm that's threatening the area, they've got to figure out how to get them to leave. Because they're all living in fifth wheelers, all living in trailer parks. They have very minimal flood protection. And even if that flood protection works, as we saw in Hurricane Milton, inside 8 hours it rained 20 inches in some areas as it made landfall, such as St. Petersburg. So think about a 20 to 25 inch rainfall event in an 8-hour period in Plaquemines Parish with 7,000 people. You could have serious mass casualties, very serious mass casualties. So we need to really think about what needs to be done. This is the kind of thing that we do all the time. I'd like to go ahead and just zip forward to some of the things and some of the lessons that we have. First of all, the reopening and recovery of so many of our hurricanes and ports and waterways really relies upon the Coast Guard MITSRU. MITSRU is absolutely the Bible and is the process by which we all find out and coordinate and team up to really recognize what impacted waterways and port areas are there, what do we have to do to action a response to them, and what do we do to actually start piping in what are those impacts. That's one of the most important things about it when you realize the fact that in southwest Louisiana or with Hurricane Ida on the Mississippi River, it took a while to realize we had Entergy power lines down. Who knew? Well, I heard. Well, where did you hear? And finally, we really then started using the CART system with MITSRU and started having a pipeline centralized with actionable evidence, documentation, and who's going to work the problem through the MITSRU program. So I give great credit to the Coast Guard for standardizing that and actually creating a much more formalistic way that we can work. So in the case of Hurricane Milton, we actually had members of MITSRU certified experts flying in from across the country just to be with us at the Incident Command Center in Orlando. With us, as we did with last year with Francine and we did with Milton, we rolled into the areas with our navigational response teams. We brought 2 teams into David Rabolet's backyard. He put us right there next to his front door at the port, and we worked the HNC within just a few short days. We also flew aerial imagery. The National Weather Service, NOLA, Weather Forecast Office, was creating an operational picture of what we could expect in terms of conditions, which was actually quite favorable, and we were able to make the window, open the agency, report dangers and navigations, stray ships, and then get out of there very, very quickly. The whole mantra here is get in, do the work, reopen, recover, and then go ahead and move out of the area then for other people like FEMA and others to come in and start actioning future response efforts. In the case of Hurricane Milton, Milton took a dead aim right into the Tampa Bay area. That is one of the nightmare scenarios. 4 million people living around the Tampa Bay rim at an elevation of 3 to 4 feet. There are major shock trauma hospitals on Davis Island. I was born there. It is absolutely flood prone beyond all description. It makes one of the most bizarre experiences why you'd put your major shock trauma hospital in a place that's actually going to be taken out in an instant. They actually had to put flood walls around it just to protect it. With 23 million Floridians, they're burning about 35 million gallons of gasoline today. 95% of all of the fuel has to be brought in by ship, either tows along the North Florida side or by ships leaving here in Louisiana out of Lake Charles, out of Sabine, out of the Mississippi River to keep them supplied. Port Tampa Bay is the state's largest port. So when Milton took a straight edge aim to him, my colleague, the navigation manager there, and his family, we had a short discussion on a Saturday morning. I said I would go ahead and go into Tampa and stay there. They would move up to the National Weather Service Weather Forecast Office in Tallahassee, which is also right next door to the Florida EOC, which is a huge, huge organization up there. And I went ahead and went in. Tampa became so threatened that I actually moved over to Orlando. And as I was driving to Orlando, I got a call from the Coast Guard, like, we're setting up our MITSRU IMT in Orlando. I said, great. I'll be there about 2 hours before you will. And as it was assembled, the whole concept and plan of recovery really took shape. We had to reopen the Port of Tampa Bay. The ideal that the governor, totally fine people, was that, hey, we'll just overload fuel shipments into Port Canaveral, Miami, and other port, and Jax. And Port Canaveral came back and said, we don't have fuel tank. I mean, we have 5% of the fuel storage that Tampa Bay has. Tampa Bay brings in about 10 billion gallons of motor fuels every year. Port Canaveral has a few tanks. So you can't overload us because we got nowhere to put it. And that was the same with Jacksonville. That was the same with Miami as well. So we had to really reopen and establish that MITSRU and IMT as quickly as possible. One of the things as we drew closer to the storm, as it kept coming in as a Cat 5, Cat 4, but if you'll recall with the Maui fires and if you'll recall with the California fires, Florida utility operators made the proactive decision announcing that all the coastal areas of the Tampa Bay area, they were going to shut down all utilities, period, about 24 to 36 hours before the storm's arrival. All water, all power, all sewer, everything was being shut down. They were not going to leave anything on. With the mandatory evacuations that was being broadcast, that meant 5 million people got on the move and left that area. And as they left, they drained every fuel station on the way out the door. Every fuel station out the door. Marine shipping of fuel into Tampa Bay had stopped, Port Manatee, Port Tampa Bay, so all the storage tanks at Tampa were empty. So it really set a precedent of the utility companies coming together with the state saying, we're shutting off all utilities. You can stay here if you want, but you will not have water, you won't have sewer, you will not have electricity, you will not have air conditioning. The hospitals will not be on because they said as well, we're leaving, we are shutting down our hospitals. And so it forced a move that was unprecedented. So sitting in Orlando, we established with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Coast Guard a plan of resurveying all the channels and waterways in the port areas from the sea buoy all the way into Port Tampa and into Port Manatee. And this was effective as soon as we had clear weather that would allow us to get our boats and ships into the area. All right, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Want to try clicking? Who's got the, try clicking? There you go.
Is that it?
Yep. So we position, so one of the other things too, we will not, and nor should you expect us to put emergency response personnel into the impact area, except for me, I guess like an idiot that I was, but established myself in position with the IMT and the MITSRU, but having a response crew with high draft, very wind vulnerable survey boats and everything like that, you cannot put them into those areas. You're just going to lose them, and you also risk the threat to your survey crews as well. So one was positioned in Tallahassee, one was positioned in Fernandina. The storm went through early Thursday morning. About 2 in the morning it cleared through Orlando, and it was certainly something to stay up for because it really was blowing. And that morning, as it lifted, we were fortunate to get clear skies very, very quickly, and we arrived into St. Petersburg at Sector Coast Guard Thursday afternoon. And Sector Coast Guard, I would like to point out, and I have talked about this past, communications is everything. Communications is everything. Communications is everything. We have struggled so hard to bring in emergency mobile cell phone networks, and we seem to still struggle with that. However, if you look at the new phones, which the Coast Guard was very cognizant of, they sent their field teams into this area with iPhone 14s and 15s. Anyone know why those models? Starlink connectivity. So we had AT&T. I know we had T-Mobile, and I think we had AT&T. They activated the Starlink systems. So this is a tree that was blocking our survey boat getting to the boat ramp and getting into the water. But because we were able to talk by Starlink phones to the Coast Guard who were doing recon out there in St. Pete, we said, this tree is blocking our way to get that boat to the boat ramp. Can you do something? Yes, we can. And we had some very, very excited young Coast Guard guys go find their kit at the sector with chainsaws, and you can see how well a job they did, because the next morning, Friday morning, that tree was out of the way. We launched our boats. We started with the Coast Guard monitoring our AIS positions. We had a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers boat. We had 2 NRT boats working out through Friday. And then, let's see if this works again. Hey, Cindy, can you click one more? And then as we were covering those areas, go one more. All right, leave it at that. We had a 24-hour survey boat that came out of North Florida. This is a boat that actually has a large enough crew and large enough ship that it can operate for 24 hours a day. Had dual multi-beam. It was a private contract survey boat. The Corps of Engineers asked us to go ahead and range it with the Coast Guard. It arrived at the sea buoy at just outside Tampa, Egmont Key, at about 7 o'clock on Thursday night. On Friday night. And on Friday night from 7 p.m. to 5:30 the next morning, Saturday morning, it had done 3 lines of the Tampa Bay ship channel from the sea buoy to the Skyway Bridge. And at 5:30 that morning, with the captain of the port and his waterways team, they were able to brief that the channel was clear of debris, had not altered in depth, and that limited draft shipping prior to the storm, as it was after the storm, with the findings of that boat, allowed the captain of the port to go to a 7 o'clock call with the ports of Tampa and the pilots and reopen to this ship, which came in at about 11 o'clock in the morning. It left Sabine Pass, was hovering out in the Gulf. It's full of gasoline, and that's one of our NRT survey boats escorting it into the Port Tampa. So we realize time criticality is everything. We realize that we had to reopen this as fast as possible. We effected a reopening of the state's largest port in under 36 hours. But that's only because we were able to do it based upon the lessons that we developed here of who to talk to, who to work with, how to marshal our talent and forces into an IMT as quickly as possible within a MITS-RU, and then to go and affect that with wherever that storm may be, no matter where it is in the United States. That is the one thing that I think I want to hand to you, is the fact that we have the ability to take the lessons we have from here and apply it to other places as well. Try the next slide, see if we got something. That's it. That's the Thunder. And the Thunder is actually going to be hanging out for the rest of the year in Pensacola. It's going to be joined by an autonomous unit, actually Chance Maritime, Stuart Chance out of Lafayette, Louisiana. And it's going to be available through Wolpert and a contract with them to do any storm response throughout the Gulf for the rest of this hurricane season. The ability to actually collect data and the ability to stream it in live, real time with 3 Starlink systems on that boat is a huge game changer. The ability for our reconnaissance crews at the Coast Guard to go into these impact areas with no cell phone connectivity and use the Starlink system to actually start talking back to us about conditions, where we can go, where we can't go, where we have the challenges to get the boat ramp, and also every morning and every night to have with our AIS systems knowing exactly where our vessels are and what surveying they're doing is a huge game changer. It's a huge game changer. So I'd like to just point out first of all, we need to key off on every WFO with every storm briefing, period. The Coast Guard, captain of the port, and other captains of the port, and other senior leadership of the Coast Guard, including all the way down into the IMT, could very well be different with this year's hurricane. And in fact, when I went in and I asked the IMT in Orlando who was there for Ian, and there's like no one. I mean, literally, Ian was like 2 years before. So we had to really build that rapport very, very, very quickly. The other thing I'd like to point out with the WFOs is the ability to interact very quickly with you on specific issues. You know, what do we have in terms of what are we looking at in Morgan City, Patterson, Franklin? The ability for them to assist you looking at local conditions. Local conditions. Slosh model is very broad, very widespread, but as we saw with Hurricane Ida and other things, flood protection authorities have incredible critical roles and values in terms of protection. So we need to really look at that. Lastly, transportation, getting out of these areas. Nobody, even last year, it was talked about. We are going to be challenged this hurricane season with transportation corridors. It just flat out is. A simple drive in here from the west or from the east, and you can see the challenges we're going to have. Think about the fact that we're going to try, if we get a real threat coming at us, we need to plan and be very, very proactive, because having areas of on 90, I think I ran across 3 specific areas of Highway 90, which was 1 lane only. We need to really think about that. What do we need to be doing in terms of proactivity? And I think that's the kind of thing. So I'll let it go at that. I would like to point out Roger and his retirement with Lance, with Donovan, and Mantra. I'd like to point out that these have been heroes for all of us in terms of models of what these guys have done. And I'd like to point out that with one of the hurricanes in Tallahassee, I was a weather forecast office there, and I got a call at the weather forecast desk right next to me, and this very nice person said, I'm going to be working in the flower beds this morning. Is it going to be raining today? And the forecaster said, no, Miss Nancy, I think you're going to have a wonderful time. Now you wear your hat. You know, it's going to get a little warm, and you may think about the fact it's going to rain tomorrow. Okay, well, thank you very much. Hung up, and I looked at him and says, you get that call often? Oh, Miss Nancy calls every day. So in terms of that, I'd like to point out that the WFOs are a part of your community. And so as we look at people changing and moving on, we need to recognize how much they've done. And the people like Marty and Jonathan that are going to be here, how much support they. So think about that. Thank you. Thanks, sir. Hey, that's great. Thank you very much. And be sure to tell Cindy, 13 years. We were like, what? A teenager?
I was a baby.
Yeah, I think it was a high school student project at that point.
But I have to say, when you contacted me and said, would Fort like to be involved in this, the congressman at the time was doing this in other areas, and I said, sure. And then I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do? So, and you guided me along, and thank you. It's really grown, and
How many been here? How many years? How many been here like 10 years? How many been before? Yeah, remember we used to do it at the community center? We used to pack the place. And then
Doing it 13 years.
I know. And then we had Mac and Cindy and Tori saying, we need a better facility, and look at this. And so making those kind of decisions and saying, we got a vision and here's what it's going to be, that's a huge deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate your support. Okay, I'm going to go through the parish preparation plans that we have. That's too soon. That's your list of names, Marty. Okay. This will start off that we usually do every year with the municipalities and the parish government. Declarations of emergencies can be declared by the parish president, the mayors, tribal chief, and the governor or the president. That also goes along with curfews in each of your jurisdictions. Those can be made by the mayors or the parish president. Emergency operations centers, we have one here and one at the courthouse in Franklin. Will be staged and operate out of those locations. Last year for Francine, we worked out of this building here because most of the efforts were on this side. The emergency meetings we have with the public officials, support staff, and we get briefed on the phone by the weather service. And Doug Kramer usually does that portion. And we make decisions after those meetings as to what plans we're going to take and what actions about evacuations and everything. For all the municipalities and homeowners and everything, we all have to do our share of pre-storm checks. Check and maintain your generators. Make sure that you have a good place to put your home generators so that none of the fumes go into the house. Many years we've had people die of carbon monoxide poisoning due to this fact alone. And that's one thing that can really be avoided. Police and fire, you see generators running outside of a house and the windows are open, that's wrong, Stop and go check and make sure. Prepare yourself and your families and have them ready to be evacuated if need be. This is for first responders to know. Hospital workers, everybody that has to stay behind. Make sure your families are taken care of. Those in the low-lying areas should leave early because they might get cut off by water coming up, trees blown down, or whatever. In some places, like by USAL, we have to close off the end of Highway 317 before you get to the coastline to protect for water, incoming water. So those need to be done in preparation before the storms. Okay, now this here is for emergency management training program that's provided by GOSEF on the internet. And it's a course that any public official can take. It'll give you ideas and procedures and methods of how we can operate for government services. It's just a little short introduction, but you can go to the GOSEF webpage and find that. Of course, local governments, pre-storm actions. This is another instance of it. We've all taken actions on sandbags. We always do that, but we need to let the public know where these sandbag locations are going to be. So if you get them to us, post them in your Facebook, we'll post them on our Facebook. And then news agencies will usually call in and we'll get the information to them. Take stock of what you have on hand now. If you need any emergency supplies to be stocked up, get with me or somebody might have generators that require special equipment, fuel oil or oil. Get those on hand before the storms come in. Generators, I talked about that. We have forms for GOSEF. If you need a replacement generator, we have to know what kind, what size, what voltage. with phase and everything. We have forms, Janet has the forms on the table up there. You should have one of these forms made out for every generator that you have in your water district, your pump stations, or whatever, ahead of time. Fill out these forms so that you don't have to, at the last minute, request a generator and don't have a form to fill it out. You should have these filled out already. A fuel replenishment for your generators. Those are fuel forms that GOSEF needs to know where to deliver fuel for those generators that they put in place.
Does that need to be submitted by parish, or can they do it?
I submit those. You get them to me, and I'll submit them to GOSEF on a request form that we do. But you have to know when you call, I got to have that form. If I don't have the form, it's a no-go. Everybody needs to know that. We did a few of them last year for Francine. We did get the equipment in, but we have to do all this paperwork ahead of time and get it done. The yellow section that's highlighted there is for use in reimbursement costs to FEMA. If you go and install floodgates or special purpose rock barrier to stop water coming in, any pre-storm actions that you take pictures of it, document it, get the invoices, and have one person at your agency assigned to collect all those invoices and all those expenses so that they can turn them in later in a reimbursement form to FEMA. Does anybody have a question on that? I think that's pretty simple.
You know, Marty brought up that issue about the pre and post photos. Is there
Correct.
an effort that can be thought about of trying to get a collection of
pre-storm
and photos and everything?
Right.
I'm sorry, I might have jumped ahead.
No, I got it further down the line. But surge protections, projections, rather. We have the coastline that we look at, and we get with Jonathan at the Weather Service, and he gives us ideas and the type and amount of water, when it's coming, where's it going to come from, the direction, the wind speed, and all that. We take all that into account. We give it the drainage district, the levee district, and we let them know what's going on so they can take actions about closing certain gates and all of that. Like by Usal Road, if we're going to get a surge coming in that way, we have to take action a couple of days ahead and put a rock barrier and everything to close that off. This is our famous gauge over at Sippermo Point. Marty's going to get a picture of it. All right. That gauge is 2 feet below level right now from the bottom, so you got to add 2 feet to all the elevations. But at the bottom, you think that's water, but that's really mud. That's how thick the mud is down there at Sippermo Point when it comes in. So it's really a mess. The whole entire road gets filled up with mud. Get a game plan. Okay, we have our fire department representatives here. Franklin and Morgan City, we have oxygen exchange program. They have oxygen bottles that they can exchange with people that need oxygen. We've had that in place for about a couple of years now, and it works great, right, John? Yep. Okay. And I think they came in and redid some regulators for Franklin and all that. So Health Department is on top of that. Power outages, what we recommend to people that's on CO2 concentrators or whatever is buy one of those little portable power packs. Have that on hand at your house for those purposes. Because that way, if the power goes out, you got that generator amplifier box that can work on that. Fuel, water supply, food and water supplies, prescriptions, emergency funds. We all have to get that ahead of time. Tell everyone you plan. If, for example, this plan of a family network or whatever, you call Aunt Susan up in Shreveport And all your family has her phone numbers. And then every family member that leaves a different route or whatever, they call into her, give her updates, and then anybody that wants to talk to them, if they lose contact, you lose cell signal, they'll go up to a landline and call or whatever. But everybody notifies that person and keeps track of everybody. Medical needs, we got that already. Prescriptions, I'm going to get into the paperwork and everything. Evacuation routes. The cars piled up there, yeah. Highway 90 we talked about. Baldwin, New Iberia has road construction going on. There's more planned in the future. Lafayette has a road construction going on in Broussard. The sooner you leave, the better. Okay, make sure you got fuel for your car ahead of time. And if you get to a spot where you got to sit idle for a while, make sure you get filled up before you get to those bad spots. Water, snacks, medicine, phone chargers for the drive. A lot of people think you're going to get off the road and get back in. That's not going to happen. You're going to be bogged in traffic. It's going to happen, no matter what. But you have to be patient. Use your LA 511 LA-ARG for traffic information before you leave. The first responders are going to take charge to make sure that if there's any breakdowns on these roads, single lane traffic, the priority is to clear the roads and get the cars moving, besides your medical needs, but just take the vehicles off the road, keep the traffic moving as soon as you can. Okay. Now, the reason why you want to leave early is you want to wait till the last minute. The last minute doesn't work because you're going to get bogged in traffic and the storm's coming, so you're going to be sitting there in the storm before you even get to where you want to go. The winds will pick up and it's going to block your path that you want to go. Okay, this is what it looks like on Highway 90 in some portions. Now you got to remember, you're not the only ones from this parish that's going to be on the road. You're going to have Lafourche, Assumption, and everybody else coming this way, depending on the direction of the storm. They're going to be getting on the roads before you do, you know. So you're not going to be all in the parish on the road. Shelters. We don't have a shelter of last resort, but we do have a shelter scheduled for the parish in Alexandria. And we have two pickup points that we use in St. Mary. One is the Morgan City Junior High, the other one's Franklin High in Franklin. Bus transportation is provided by the school board. Thank you, ma'am. And they will assist us in getting the two schools open, registering people, and getting people on buses. At that time, when we do that, fire and police will need to help us loading people, traffic direction, and everything else at those two locations. Nursing homes and homebound persons will be taken care of first priority. Nursing homes, they all have plans for buses and everything. They'll just need assistance from fire departments and local agencies to assist in loading the patients. And those are not able to travel by a bus, correct? This is our famous shelter picture. Don't expect privacy. Okay, this is post-storm, but pre-storm, like I was talking about, is we have to take pictures to know what you have on hand ahead of time. Okay, that's very important. Keep that in files. One person in the office keeps all those records. Okay, you got serial numbers, pictures of your items, whatever. Your computers, your networks, and everything you have to see about. But make an initial assessment for infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, this means your fire stations are still intact, police stations, your government buildings, your water plants are still good, your sewer plants are still good, power company's good, the roadways are open. All of that is called infrastructure, right? Now, what's the other thing is infrastructure? Is your hospitals, your nursing homes, your schools. All of that needs to be taken into account. You should have before and after pictures of everything. And you should have records, all your computer records, your storage for computers, your servers, your IT department should be taking stuff off-site, or you transmit it off-site, one or the other, so that you have your records intact. You can lose a laptop or things like that, but not the information that's stored from the schools. Okay, we need all of that information to know when it's okay for the evacuees to come back home. And we'll put it on the news networks. If there's a problem that the people can't come back home, we'll put that out. They can listen to the news in our Facebook pages. Okay. Fire departments, police departments, you can take pictures of the schools, infrastructure, whatever, send that back to us at the EOC, and we can publish that to GOSEF so that we can keep track at the state level of what's damaged, and where they need to apply the most resources to. Like take pictures of the damage. I was telling you, just don't take a picture of a little tree on the road. Where is it? So that we can let our public works know. Okay, this here is our damagela.gov with the caption that you can take with your phone. A lot of people use this for Francine over on this end in Franklin. Everybody had this. When they went through the lines, we told them about the little cards. We gave out a paper with this on it, telling them to report their damage. When you get to the house, they take a picture of the damage and it uploaded onto this. This here is what it looks like, what it's going to spit out at the GOSEF and state level. FEMA can see this. Numbers 731 reports we had reported for Francine. That's from homeowners, police, fire, or whatever. They reported all of this. Now, when they get this, FEMA and GOSEF sits down in the office at Baton Rouge. They look at each one of these dots, and they make a tally to determine the amount of damage that's been done or whatever. They can even get down to where you can see the photographs that's put in. It gives a description the homeowner puts in about the damage. FEMA and GOSEF looks at that, and they can make right away that we can be declared in an emergency situation, okay? So that they don't have to come and do survey checks and all of this. It's already done in this system. This has been used and proven to work well. So we got a heads up on our FEMA coming in to assist us. Part of dispensing, distribution from the National Guard that they did over here. We make the call, we call it in, we organize a location. One's in Morgan City at the auditorium, and the other one's in Franklin on Hakely Street by the old hospital. Those are the two locations that's in GOSEF where the National Guard can set up and put pods at. We only use one pod for Francine because most of the damage was on this end. But that did not stop people coming from the other end or any location from Homa they came to get supplies, okay? It's not restricted to anybody. We close the pods when the power comes back on, when the water and infrastructure is back on, when the grocery stores are open, when the gas stations are open. There's no need for a pod after that. because all the stores and everything is open. The hospital's open. We had so many other relief agencies that came in. Samaritan Purse, Red Cross, a whole bunch of them. Janet got in touch with them, made a few phone calls, and word spread. We incorporated those facilities within our pods at the Morgan City location, and it worked really well. This is a picture of it. And Guard had it all lined up. They got plans and procedures lined up, already written out. If you need this pod, this is what comes with it. This is how many trucks come. This is how many soldiers you need. The little pop-up tents. They organize all of that, and all of that comes in. It takes a few hours to set up overnight. They had it done, and it really, really worked well. I think Chief Morgan City, they helped with traffic and all of that, and it was really good. Okay, post-storm continued. This is what people are at their shelters looking at, or when they evacuated. They had this. You got to have all this in place before you come back home. What's the use of coming home if you have nothing to go, no place to sleep, no electricity, nothing, so you have to wait it out. Nursing homes, they have to make sure that they can have their structures back up and safe. They have to have all the utilities working, the sewer and everything else. And they have to, if they had lost electricity or something like that during a storm, they have to get certified by the fire department, by the fire marshal's office to go back in. And it'll be the mayor or the parish president to authorize everybody to come back. Okay. Is there any questions from the emergency preparedness section? Yes, Ms. Cindy.
I just thought about something as we're going over evacuation routes and so on. And social media, there's been conversation back and forth on the 182 bridge and how it should just be gone. How critical is that bridge, in your opinion, when it comes to evacuation time?
Well, we can remember when the big bridge was out and all we had was a little one, so it goes back and forth. It is critical for local traffic to go back and forth to do things and let the main flow of traffic from the rest of the people that go through. But you can still wind up on the same road once you get across if you're traveling.
It is another
yes.
opportunity to get across the road.
It's very important for us to get that back up and running. And I don't know what the time schedule is. Does anybody know? June of this year? That'd be nice. So, I know with the high water situation, we had to shut it down for a while to take the center scaffolds out, and we worked with the Coast Guard on that. So who's next on the list?
Hey, Jimmy.
Yes. You can get ready.
I contacted the DOT a few weeks ago, and they were telling me November. Hopefully you got that news that I did. Also, a question about the oxygen tanks at the fire stations. Is that for public to know about, to get, or just for first responders?
No, that's for the public
Okay.
to make an exchange.
Okay.
Once the storm comes and they're stuck at home, they're running out of oxygen. That's an emergency exchange that they can do.
Okay.
That's all it's for.
wondered
If you
if
what really needs to be done, if a storm is coming, that person contacts their vendor. We got a storm coming, so leave me these extra bottles before the storm comes. That's what should be done. But if they do run out or get low, then they get to the fire station and just exchange bottles.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's what that's for.
Okay.
And it's worked really well. I think we had over 70 bottles that were exchanged, and that's a critical need. So that the health department really did good on that.
It's going to happen automatically then before I need that.
Yes. No, we have them already in stock at the fire stations. We're ready to go. Sam Jones, our parish president, is here. He's going to come up and make a few remarks.
I know it doesn't seem like it's possible, but my first storm was in 1957, where we lost 500 people in that area to death. It was one of the worst ever. And what I learned from that, I was 5 years old. My grandfather brought me out to the railroad track where the water comes over. There were snakes and every other kind of animal swimming in and all of that, and it left a mark on me. One piece of advice I can give everybody, and I've been through Andrew, I've been through Hilda, I rode in the helicopters with Kathleen Blanco doing the one in New Orleans. We can never overdo our plans to evacuate, and if you do, there's a chance you'll lose someone. I'm proud to say that we never have lost someone in our area that I can recall, because we overdid evacuation. We did it early, we did it strong, we were very insistent for people to get out, because you know what, you can come back in 2 days and you might have spent an extra $1,000, but you came back alive. And that's the advice that I give a lot of decision makers here, and I think we all need to follow that and do our best. I want to thank y'all for coming. Jimmy, you can have the thing back.
Mike, ready?
Are you going to have any emergency responder permits or placards for our crews to need to get entry into the area, or is just let you know we're coming in?
No, for y'all, you get your work, get your form, your ID.
Yeah, we got all that.
I did want to mention that we're applying to the federal government for $50 million to pave the levee the rest of the way out. That would give us the exit that we really need. Right now, as you said, we down to one road sometimes, and it goes on for days. I remember coming back from, I was out of town coming back from the hurricane in New Orleans, and it looked like the Third Army had come through. You know, it was a long thing. It went on until 4 o'clock in the morning before people got out, but they, you know, for the most part got out, except those that didn't have the capacity to do it.
Are you going to have a presence in Franklin and here?
Yes.
In terms of staying?
Yes. Yes.
Yep, that's it. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Now we're going to have Mike Mercado with the Levee District for St. Mary is going to give us a heads up. And also, if you can, speak about the flood situation.
Yes, I can. Can y'all hear me? Really close to the mic. Right? Good morning. My name is Mike Mercado with St. Mary Levee District. I'm going to do things a little bit different this year. I'm going to go through our structures, but not focus so much on that. I want to kind of give an outline of what we do pre-storm, post-storm, things like that. I have control of this, Tori? Yep, there we go. So you'll see here, this is our district map. One of the kind of special things about St. Mary is the fact that probably 90% of our levees are actually riverine levees and not storm surge levees. The good thing is we can use them for both. You can see everything here. We currently have almost a complete loop around Morgan City. Berwick and Patterson have a complete loop. We have closed the loop from the Wax Lake outlet to the Sherrington Canal. So there's a loop that protects this entire area. Then you got the Bayou Sally area, and we are currently, these levees don't currently exist. We are working on plans for all of those, and those would strictly be, I guess you could say strictly storm surge, but they could provide benefit for riverine as well. On. Oh, there we go. Went too far. That's it. Did I miss something? What's before that? It's probably going to jump.
Are we working?
That's the beginning. Hang on. Don't do anything. Let's see. Okay, that's where we were. Why does it stop working? Okay, there we go. Just one thing real quick, and I guess this kind of goes along with the current flooding. This is the map of the United States. Obviously, you see the pink areas, which is a vast majority of the United States. And the one thing I want to keep driving home is that 30% of that, plus all of the Red River, comes through Morgan City and Patterson, for that matter. So we're very important to the nation, and we need to keep talking about that to make sure they don't forget about us. So starting on the west end, I'll start with the Bayou Teche flood control structure. This is on the Sherrington Canal. You can see Sherrington Canal runs this way. This is the actual Bayou Teche going east-west, and this structure protects from Sherrington Canal going east to the Wax Lake outlet, so the Franklin area, Centerville. And then added to this over in the past 2 years is the Yoakley extension. So previous, you had the Yoakley levee, the federal riverine levee that ended at Industrial Road in Franklin. And this is what would happen. This is a picture from Hurricane Barry, and I want you to remember this picture because it's going to come up again here in a little bit. But this was happening every couple of years. We have since built this infrastructure inside of these shipyards. This is Metal Shark here, and then Gulfcraft on the other side. And this is the system that goes in place. We have contractors that come in and install these. It takes about 12 hours probably to install them fully. It's a removable flood wall, and they basically stand these uprights. These uprights are bolted into a slab foundation that has sheet pile, pipe pile, all kinds of stuff holding it in place. They go in and set these in place and close off that gap to prevent the water you saw in the previous picture. We had been flood fighting this for a number of years. It was actually old HESCOs that were in place from the 2011 flood. We kept utilizing that and closing the gaps off. It was typically in the middle of the night during the storms, and we learned lessons real quick, and we pushed forward to get this project completed. So that's what the flood wall looks like. It goes through Metal Shark and Gulfcraft. So that's that loop that we closed off all the way to Bayou Teche. And then you come into the city of Franklin. You got the Franklin Canal floodgate and pump structure, or pump station. There's a floodgate, it closes off, and they were able to maintain the water levels on the inside with the pump station. That's just looking north. Hanson Canal is the only other inlet to Bayou Teche from the south end. So it's important to get this closed off as well. Then the Yellow Bayou closure and pump station. This is looking northward. This canal actually goes all the way near the central office in Centerville. So it prevents the flooding in those neighborhoods and the central office area. And then the Morgan City backwater protection. Everything here that you see is in place except for the lakefront. And then this tiny connection here, which means that currently this railroad track is used as the levee system for the interior of Morgan City. Just recently, we installed a plug at LA 70, so it closes off the LA 70 canal, and in fact, that did save probably the Brownell Homes area as well as some of the interior of Morgan City during Francine, because we did see higher water levels. And then the Bayou Chene floodgate is not classified as a storm surge barrier, but it can be used in the I'll call it the right storm. For Francine, all indications showed that Francine was going to basically come up Highway 317. In that event, we need to close this structure because it keeps the water out of the Lake Verret Basin, Lake Palourde, those areas. And of course, Francine kind of skirted to the south and the east of us and changed things up a little bit, but we were able to deal with them and get rid of the water as we needed to. This is a picture from last week.
The barge is currently closed due to a high river, and it's very obvious here what's river water and what's not river water. You can see the south side of the structure, the mud river water being blocked from going into Lake Palouse.
What's the head between the two sides?
Currently, it's running around a foot. Yeah.
And decisions to close is entirely within the levee district?
No, we have an operating criteria that went along with our permit, and it says 7 feet on the Morgan City gauge. So if we're anticipating hitting 7 or going past that, we do a closure. So that's what triggered this closure here. And the earlier we can keep those levels out of the upper basin, the better.
So,
Go ahead.
clarification, so you don't have to get, so you got a permanent permit from the Corps?
Correct. Correct, but we do have discussions with Coast Guard, the Corps, the port. We go through all of those things, the state, CPRA, before we make the decision to close, and we explain to them our reasoning, and that's what triggers it.
What's your design maximum head in terms of the two different, the two levels?
The top of the floodgate is a plus 10, so we can keep it out up to there. In Francine, we did have a reverse head situation because, again, it went to the south and east of us, drew the water out of this area, and then dumped a decent amount of rain in the basin. And pretty quickly figured out how we could get rid of that water, and it was actually opening the Bayou Bluff locks. Thanks, LaDon.
Did the reverse head have problems on the structure?
No, it did not. And that's the thing about this structure. This isn't a closed system like you have in Terrebonne, so the water has places to go. And we're in the process currently of doing some modeling to see what is our worst case scenario. So just to make sure that we don't put the structure at risk. Any other questions? So to get into kind of how we operate and what goes through, what our processes are to make decisions on storm surge, it's strictly storm surge. So many years ago, it was probably 10 years ago, LSU started working on this coastal emergency risk assessment tool. And with it, they discussed with us, or we discussed with them, the necessity of having our levee elevations in this modeling. And the reason being is National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service puts out information, but do not put into account warnings, for instance, and don't take this as a bad weather service, but they will issue warnings that will show like areas of Franklin. Not about it, and I think it had a lot to do with rules and things like that didn't allow them to put them in. But we've been working with Sarah and the people up there. Hey, the water's going to get in there. Of inches, because we do post-storm surveys as well to see how it
accurate in that model. We got the levee data from them, and
Thing, like for Milton, it was a hot mess because the slosh was not keeping up and the specificity just wasn't there. So people like University of South Florida was really stepping in and, well, they were basically using something similar to really give us something much more specific.
Well, and this is available for the entire country.
Yeah.
I mean, they're running these models even for storms that aren't coming to South Louisiana. That's good too. And this is just to kind of show you, this again, Bayou Sally, and this is telling me right here that this is where the water's infiltrating. So that's the area that we need to go and flood fight.
but I will say, like you said earlier, they'll do the left-right track, stuff like that. But the reason we shy away from these single track runs is because we know the forecast is not perfect. Like for instance, Hurricane Laura. The day before, I really thought Lake Charles was going to be flooded. And that's why we evacuated. We left the office first time ever. We left the office because we thought we were getting flooded. But then within 24 hours, it shifted 25 miles, and that made a world of difference.
And it was the same with Francine. I mean,
And you're right.
to the morning of impact,
Yep.
it was Highway 317, Highway 317, and then as it came in, it went to the south and
And
east.
it makes a big difference.
It did. It really does. Huge difference. Again, this is just a close-up showing the infiltration over by Meadow Shark. And again, we use this tool to react. And we don't use one track, we use worst-case scenario. So we're always going after that. We're not going to, we make sure that we're covered in every aspect that we need to be. And then here, this is just, I wanted to show these. We have gate lists with elevations for Morgan City and Berwick, and this is what we use to communicate with the municipalities on which gates to close. That's the one for Morgan City. And this goes same for river floods as well. This is how we make our decisions on what to close and keep open. And then the last thing, if you can pull up our website, this is something where St. Mary Levee District has a gauge network that we utilize to, it came up? Yeah. Click on Bayou Chene. That we use to monitor water levels throughout St. Mary Parish. Was finally able to figure out how to get this to where it was a little more user-friendly. Bayou Chene and Bayou Teche both have weather stations on them with wind and rain. One of the things we're lacking in this area is information. We don't know what the wind's doing. We don't have any farms that serve proper data as far as wind and rain goes. So each end of the parish we have that. Here at the EOC I installed one. It's more of a home unit. But it's have true data and not, we have, I'll call it the best home systems weather stations you can get. We have them installed at Teche and Chene. And every time you learn something new, something else happens. So gathering data is huge with St. Mary Levee District. As you can see up here, the Bayou Chene water level this is on it. So there's the different gauges. Again, Chene and Teche both have weather stations. If you go down a little further, it shows the Bayou Chene weather, Bayou Teche weather, but again, that's with the shows on that. And then you see EOC weather. That's the Tempest system that's been pretty accurate. You can click on that. You can get wind, rain, humidity, everything you could imagine on that.
All right. Weather stations on those?
I have one at Tesh, which is on the west end of the parish, and one on Shane, which is on the east.
What kind of system is it?
It's a Tempest, I'm sorry, not Tempest. It is the Vent Gauge. What's the one y'all use? You tell me it's that one.
Is that Davis?
No, it's the little airplane looking one.
No, Davis is a manufacturer. Publicly available.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you archiving? You're archiving.
Oh, yeah. Because it's actually tied, it's connected directly to our gauge stations.
Yeah.
So it's all working. 30-foot tower on a 10-foot wall.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's a standard.
And
Okay.
archive data is easily accessible as well? Or is it something we gotta go through the?
No, actually, I think you just installing them 2 months ago, so
So next wish list, do you have any cameras?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and in fact, I have cameras at Tesh and Shane. Shane on a battery backup, because of course a storm comes, the power goes out, we can't see anything anymore. I believe we can get 80 hours out of the battery setup we have out there. And the big reason for that is because it's not accessible. You know, during a storm, you can't get out there. Bayou Tesh, we can get out there and start the generator if we need to.
Yeah.
Or physically just go to check on things.
Are the cameras going to be like on this site?
No.
Okay.
Those are internal only, but we can work on something. Yeah, they're not for public, but we can get y'all in.
No, I mean, just like you said, the lack of data and the lack of visuals is
Yes.
a big thing that you're addressing.
Well, and we saw that after Francine, because how much rain did we get? They were saying this, they were saying that. You know, we were trying to get an actual reading, and it was tough to do because no one had real data. So we want to have that because it's important. That's all I got. Any questions?
I got one quick question.
Yes.
So we saw variants on this list for 2025. If that same storm and that same scenario is coming again,
Good answer.
Stand. So they weren't going to flood. Well, the wind fields were so many long. Because of people. So, I mean, it's just one of
Yes, we were in the middle of, we had a 7.5 river at the same time. Yeah, but if they say evacuate, please evacuate.
every 5 years was minimal 36 to 48 hours out. So, I mean, it's just one of those things with intensification.
Okay, next we're going to have the Coast Guard come and do a presentation.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Commander Mary Gilday, and I am the commanding officer of Marine Safety Unit, Morgan City, right downstairs. Been in the Coast Guard, going on in Louisiana. Hurricane season 2025.
Your Coast Guard units in Houma, Morgan City, and Lafayette, because those are the ones that he oversees directly, we're ready for what comes our way, and we will be here to respond. We train year-round for these natural disasters, and for example, for Hurricane Francine, we got our families evacuated early in advance, and with that, then we had a crew here that stayed behind for 5 days in preparation and in response to Hurricane Francine. Last year was a true testament of our outstanding working relationship that we had with Army Corps, the Port of Morgan City, St. Mary Levee District, Mr. Jimmy with GOSEP, GEICA, Mr. Paul Dittman, and Mr. Jones with the parish president. And there were a number of other stakeholders, agency partners, state, local, that we also worked with. I'll tell you, it's not common for you to be able to have on speed dial these local members. And I've worked in other cities before, and you don't have that opportunity. So thank you so much for all of you who we got to work with last year in restoring, especially our focus is restoring the marine transportation system. So I don't want to hold up too much of Lieutenant Janelle Piche's time, but one thing I will head on with regards to waterway users, please closely monitor those marine safety information bulletins that are published on behalf of the captain of the port, and especially with regards to just knowing when to get off of the waterway. I know it sounds like common sense, but an example from last year, the Bayou Chene floodgate closed. We had advance notification. It was no surprise, and we still had I know some laugh because they know, we still had a very large vessel along with a few other vessels that were together and thought that we were going to be able to open the floodgate. While we can, talk about it now, thank goodness no one was injured, but there were over 100 people that did not get to come through that floodgate, and they ended up riding out the storm. Okay, so I share that because, again, common sense. You got a hurricane coming your way. It's not like a tornado where you just have minutes, right? We have advance notice. Please take early precautionary steps and get off the waterway. I can't stress that enough. And it sounds like common sense, but again, that just happened last year. So I'm not going to steal any more of Lieutenant Piche's thunder. Thank you again. Hopefully, in this case, we don't have to work with each other again for this season, but if we do, we're ready. So thank you, Lieutenant Piche.
Thank you, Commander. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Janelle Piche. I am the current Waterways Division Manager here at MSU Morgan City, and I'm going to go over with you the Coast Guard's priority during hurricane season. So, port conditions. When we have a storm that is heading our way, we are going to be setting the port conditions. Again, Captain Franz, that is the captain of the port in Houma, he's going to be determining what port conditions we're going to be in, and this is going to be based mainly off of when those outermost hurricane bands are going to be affecting our area. So we have port condition Whiskey, X-Ray, Yankee, Zulu. So during port condition whiskey and x-ray, we're still going to have port conditions open, but that is the ample time for vessels to get off the water. When we hit port condition Yankee, that's when all of the vessels that do plan on staying in port, and those vessels specifically are ocean-going vessels of 300 gross tons or more, they need to let our office know and request permission to remain in port. So then after we get through port condition Yankee and port condition Zulu, that's when the port is closed, no facility operations, and no traffic. Then you'll see port condition recovery. Sometimes we also call that port condition normal when we're starting to reconstitute the marine transportation system. So our priorities when closing the port, again, we have that 72, 48, 24, and 12 hours. Like Commander Gilday had mentioned, we're going to be putting those port closing priorities out through marine safety information bulletins. We send those to an email distribution list. If you are not on our email distribution list, please see anybody in blue today. We'll make sure that we get a card or your email address, and we'll add you to that distribution. And they're also posted on this website, the navsen.uscg.gov/MSI. That stands for Marine Safety Information. We used to have the home port, the public-facing website. Home port is no longer in use. We're utilizing this NavSen website, and it is an awesome interactive map where all of the local notices, they're posted on this national map. Click and hover over and to see if there's any MSIBs for shoaling, MSIBs for closures. You can see if there's any ATONs that are off station. It's a really great.
Investigate. Can we search for the sector or the MSU specifically, like for this MSIBs?
Yes, sir. So when you get to that website, it's actually going to be all of the United States, and you can zoom in specifically to the area that you want to look at. So also during these port conditions prior to the hurricane hitting, we're going to be having harbor patrols. We're going to be sending out our teams of coasties. They're going to be going to visit all of those vessels. They're going to be looking at mooring lines, the mooring arrangements. They're going to be visiting our waterfront facilities. They're going to be checking to make sure equipment is secured, that cranes are secured. They're going to be looking at the containment to make sure that there's no pollution incidents, right? So they're going to be looking for those hazards. And of course, if there's any questions, you can contact us prior to the hurricane. So for VTS Berwick Bay, again, they're going to be basing off of their closures from the captain of the port conditions, but then also what influences the closures is that BNSF railroad, that railroad bridge that's in Morgan City. They will close on predetermined wind thresholds. That's usually at 30 knot sustained winds or gusts of 35 knots or more. And then, as previously talked about by Mr. Brocado, we have the Bayou Chene floodgate as well that will close, and then our lock closures with the Army Corps. So those are all influences to our port conditions as well. So safe refuges. We have VTS Berwick Bay. It is not considered a port of safe refuge for vessels. So the event of a tropical storm or a hurricane, VTS is going to start requesting that those larger vessels, again, those ocean-going 300 gross tons or more, that they evacuate out of the area. So those safe routes, that's going to be north on the Port Allen route or on the Atchafalaya River, east of Bayou Buffalock, or that's going to be west of the Wax Lake outlet. So again, with the Bayou Chene floodgate, a lot of times when we're doing our reconstitution, some of these floodgate structures in the locks, they may take time to reopen. So we always advise for vessels to make sure they know exactly where they're going to find these safe refuges. So we do have some areas that are fleeting areas for barges in Bayou Chene and Bayou Schaefer. So if vessel owners are planning to fleet in those areas to weather out the storm, we do request that they report it to VTS, tell us their quantity, cargo if applicable, and then we're going to require hurricane anchors and wire ties to make sure that they're safe throughout the storm. So after the storm passes, what is the Coast Guard's priority? Of course, number one, always search and rescue. Secondly, we're going to be trying to reconstitute the marine transportation system and get commercial traffic back into the area, right? So what is that going to look like? That's going to be port assessments. So we need to do navigational channel surveys. That's to get vessels out on the waterways again. We're going to be looking for air draft issues. So are there any drooping paralines that are going across the waterway? Are there no underwater hazards? No metal roofs or anything flew into the waterway, right? We're also going to be looking for excessive shoaling, making sure that we have no draft restrictions on our vessels. And we're also going to have our ATON team. They're going to be out there doing verification. Did any of our aids move? Do we have any obstructions or hazards that need to be marked with buoys or lights to keep our mariners safe? And we're going to be doing that by using our partnerships with GICA, the Gulf Intercoastal Canal Association, Army Corps, and NOAA. They have side sonar scanning vessels that help us look underneath the water column to see what those hazards are. And Morgan City Coast Guard, we also have 2 drones. We have the Skydio and Anafi Parrot platforms that will also have our teams going out there to check for those hazards as well. We're also going to be looking at the infrastructure, locks and bridges. Were there any damage to that? Pollution. Our teams will be able to identify and make sure that pollution is contained. And then lastly, facility statuses. Are they able to come back up and running? Can we start having them receive commercial traffic? And for example, Hurricane Francine last year, to complete all of these port assessments, it took several days. It was definitely a huge effort from all of our industry partners, and we were able to lift all of those restrictions within 7 days of Hurricane Francine hitting our area. So now that you know the Coast Guard's priorities, I want to introduce to you the leadership that's going to make it happen. So Commander Mary Gilday, she already introduced herself. She's going to be leaving us this July. Her replacement is going to be Commander Joshua Weidman. He's going to be reporting in mid-July. He had already previously served in Homa, so he is a repeat down here to the bayou. He's excited to come back, so you'll be in good hands. We have Lieutenant Commander Matthew Meekum. He's MSU Morgan City's executive officer. We have with us today our Chief of Prevention, Lieutenant Commander Laura McDonald. And we also have up here in the front, we have the VTS Berwick Bay Supervisor Director, Mr. Tim Veach. Also part of his team, we have Senior Chief Marty Colvin. She's also here in the room. And then we have our Aids to Navigation team sitting over here in the back as well. Now these phone numbers that are up here, please take a screenshot. These are 24/7 phones. So anything waterways, pollution facility information, if you have any questions, concerns, or need to report anything, you can utilize those phone numbers. If you don't know who you need to talk to in the Coast Guard, go through the Officer of the Day phone number. They can act as a dispatch to get you in touch with exactly who you need to speak with. VTS Berwick Bay, it's going to go right to Mr. Veach and his team. And if there's anything search and rescue related that you want a direct line to, you can call Sector New Orleans Command Center. And again, that port conditions website is on the bottom. Please utilize that. And that is all I have for everybody. Thank you for your attention. Are there any questions that you have for the Coast Guard? Yes, Cindy.
The safe refuge routes, are those like official routes somewhere designated, like on paper or?
Like, is it written anywhere? Safe refuge routes aren't necessarily written anywhere, but certainly VTS is going to be contacting those larger vessels that they see in the area to ask them to utilize those routes.
I was just wondering if we could use that as some type of backup when we request dredging in Stouts Pass. That was why I was asking that question. Okay, thank you.
Some of your newscasts, whatever, that you put out, the bulletins about parking barges against levees and all that, y'all mentioned that.
In the MSIVs? So the question was in regards to parking barges along the levees. Certainly we're not going to we're not, if there is a fleet of barges that are parked along levees within the VTS area, we will request them to move those to safer locations where they can weather out the storm. Mhm.
Okay.
And that will all be explained in the MSIBs that do come out for the port conditions. Yes, sir?
We were on the water a lot, and we were asked by the local Coast Guard units to report off-station or missing aids to navigation. So we were compiling big lists. Is there an opportunity maybe that you could give us a format that we could be using to fill out those reports? Because we were getting a couple different Coast Guard sectors saying, well, just send it to us. Well, we sent 50 of them, and it's like, whoa, could you do it on a format like an Excel spreadsheet? So if we could get something ahead of time as a standard format we could report, that'd probably make it easier. The second issue is that the imagery that we're collecting after the storm with the NOAA Remote Sensing Division is becoming so good that Sector St. Pete was able to go ahead and use the imagery to actually find the ATON. And they were actually then able to, they had some GIS people that were actually able to look at the light list at its position with the georeferenced imagery, and they were able to actually do an ATON assessment for some of the waterways without even sending a boat out. So if you want, we can send you the spreadsheet, or we can send you a presentation from Sector St. Pete of how they did that.
Sure, thank you. And to answer your question for a format for reporting ATON issues, certainly we have our ATON professionals in the back, so please correct me if I'm wrong. We do have a distribution list email that goes right to sector ATON officers that will be able to handle that. So that's just a simple email, of course, of location and the characteristics of the ATON.
Yeah,
And
maybe we could talk about it. I mean, we were doing stream of consciousness type thing with our crews, like in Tampa Bay, and after about 35 reports by email, by messenger, the Coast Guard ATON team said, okay, just stop. Just wait to the end of the day and send it to us, because you're running into like 100 reports, and it's all coming like with, you know, basically just a short message like, oh, look, if we took a picture, it's gone, this and this. In the end, people were saying, we need something a little more. We need a little more of a better format that we can just start processing.
Understood. No, thank you for your concern. We'll make sure that we get a better clarification on how to report ATON discrepancies before hurricane season. Awesome. Anything else for Coast Guard?
Safe
Yes,
haven for the area for boats, shrimp boats and what have you, tugboats.
Your question was
Safe haven?
for shrimp boats?
Right.
Certainly, again, VTS is going to request that those larger vessels that are ocean going over 300 gross tons, that they seek refuge elsewhere, right? But if they're a smaller vessel like that, as long as their mooring arrangements are doubled up, that they're using wire rope instead of a synthetic or cotton-based, certainly that they can remain within maybe Bayou Chene, Bayou Schaefer, somewhere that's off of the Atchafalaya River or the ICW. Great. Well, thank everybody for your time.
That's the end of our presentations, but we've asked a couple of other people to come in and just give us a quick rundown of what part they're playing in the hurricane recovery and so on. And so the first people that I have is U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we have Mr. Tim Cannell, who's our operations manager for the Bayou, Atchafalaya River, Bayous Buff, Black, and Chene. And I'm going to ask Robbie Swayze to come up as well, who is the operations manager for GIWW. And just, you can give us some quick details, and I know like we have high water coming, if you want to just mention a little bit about that, real quickly.
Hi,
Thank
Cindy.
you.
Well, thank you. How you doing? I'm Tim Cannell. I really don't have much to say other than, you know, we're here to basically support everybody when we have these events. The lock personnel, they will remain at the lock until the point where the Coast Guard decides to close the waterways down, and then they will evacuate themselves, and then they'll be back in operation. So one thing important is that everybody needs to move before, because once the Coast Guard closes the area, the locks will not be manned until after the event. So Cindy asked me any questions about that. Okay, Cindy asked me to say something about high water. Cindy, high water's coming.
And the storm at the same time, perhaps, we never know. That would be the situation we would want to, we incurred that, like, probably for Barry, when the water was up and then Barry was coming in, so
what would you like me to say? That's bad news? I mean, you can sit here and plan all day, which a lot of people do, and that is the thing that should be done. But you have to adapt to the conditions that are going on, and that's what we will be doing. We have great staff here. We have our internal staff that does all the modeling and is prepared to respond with survey vessels and such afterwards. But depending on exactly where things go and exactly what happens, we coordinate. We have these calls, and we do what we need to do to go ahead and make it as painless as possible. But sometimes, as we've all seen in recent history, it can get really bad. So everybody just be prepared, and we're ready to adapt and do what we can do. Any questions? Well, that was simple. Okay.
Cindy, one of the things we talked about with the New Orleans district is that high water events and hurricane season can be doubly threatening. Hurricane Isaac pushed a 10-foot storm surge up the Mississippi River into downtown New Orleans. So with the lower Mississippi, with Jonathan and the lower Mississippi River Forecast Center, that's going to be one of the things we need to bring in, is the fact that if we have an event during a high water season, that could really increase the potential for real impacts.
No doubt. That's it?
You have something for us, Robbie?
Not really. Tim covered it beautifully. I would just say, like, Tim and I are both involved. I'm the operations manager for the ICW. Tim's the operations manager for Atchafalaya River. We both have locks and channels that we work with Mac and Cindy and the Coast Guard. Preparing for a storm, and then once the storm passes, doing post-storm surveys, damage assessments at the locks. Our EOCs assist in the levee districts with damage assessments of the levee systems, and so really everybody just works together to get everything back going. So we usually have our locks ready, or at least the last few storms. Hopefully it stays that way, knock on wood, but our locks are usually ready before the channels are ready. So like Francine took an enormous effort by everybody to get all the channels in the impacted area surveyed and ready to go, so we could see what, if anything, need dredging or removing. So, but we'll be ready for this coming season. So
that's it, and hopefully we'll be spared any major events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have the U.S. Coast Guard Aids to Navigation and Coast Guard Cutter Acts representatives. Do y'all want to give just a brief, this is what we do after the storm kind of thing? Thank you. You can introduce yourselves.
Hey, good morning. I'm Gary Hutchison. I'm the officer in charge over here at the Aids and Navigation team here in Morgan City. So as soon as the hurricane passes for us, we're underway as soon as the winds die down. We have a 20-knot limitation for our small boat, but as soon as we can, we check out our entire AOR, which runs from Freshwater Bayou over to Lake Cocodrie, and then Stouts Point all the way down the river. Like Lieutenant Pichet mentioned, we're just checking all our federal aids, and then any obstructions or hazards that could pose an issue with opening up the port. And then if we do come across something, we mark it as needed. If not, we pass it up and get the waterways open. So it's essentially what we do. And then Senior Chief is on the ACTS.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Senior Chief Gabe Bosman, I'm the officer in charge of the Coast Guard Cutter ACTS. We're down here at the pier in Morgan City at the port. Just like Gary had said, we kind of come back in once the hurricane's over, start rebuilding aids. The big difficulty I have is I have to leave with the ship, right? So last year during Francine, we ended up going up the river all the way to Krotz Springs, a little bit past Krotz Springs. The railroad bridge there was closed. So we sputted down there, came back. The bridge was closed, so it kind of delayed us a little bit. But that's all right because it gave the ANT teams time to go out. They kind of surveyed the aids and navigation that are damaged in the area. And we started with kind of a priority list of what do we need to rebuild, when do we need to rebuild it. So during Francine, the Homa entrance navigation ranges, those were knocked down. So that was kind of our priority. We went out and rebuilt those as quick as we could and fixed everything else. So I think we were back about a week and a half. We had everything rebuilt that had been knocked down or destroyed. So pretty quick. Like I said, the biggest thing for us is, is bridges being closed or locks being closed that we can't get through and trying to get around some of those difficulties. But, really pretty easy for us for the most part. And, like I said, we can kind of do anything we need to do. We're pretty self-sufficient. We don't really rely on anybody. We got the whole crew on the ship. We usually kind of go and rebuild and do our thing. So, any questions? All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone from the Sheriff's Department like to address the crowd as to the role you play? I think I saw the sheriff hiding in the corner over there. You guys do play a critical role during these events, so,
Yeah, so business as usual, it's not our first rodeo. We've been through these many times, obviously, so we're going to start our preparation protocols and we'll be available if anybody needs help. And we'll be there for LaDon as well. So, good to see you.
Thank you, John. He appreciate it.
I know.
He needs all the help he can get. Next time, stand up.
Sure. I didn't mean anybody to start calling on you now.
Okay, John. All right. This is going to be the last roll call. If anybody wants to come up from any agency that wanted to speak a few words. Nobody else is volunteering, huh? Mayor, David, okay. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for coming. All of our different agencies are represented here. The school board, health departments, health nursing homes, assisted living, police departments, fire departments, Coast Guard, Sheriff's Office, federal side, weather service. It's a very good meeting. All of this is taped, so you'll be able to go home and tell your co-workers that you can listen to it on the air, okay? And that they don't have to be felt left out. All right. Appreciate everybody for coming.
Thank you, man. That was great.